Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with acclaimed jazz pianist Ted Rosenthal on the 2026 album, The Good Old Days. We dig into the newest release of his Trios in 4 Acts that is an ambitious series of albums featuring his 2 working trios. They were all recorded during the summer of 2024 and issued in regular installments beginning in March of 2025. It features his close associate and the late clarinet master, Mr. Ken Peplowski. We get into their history together, the significance of Ken's career, and so much more as we remember his life. Enjoy this interview and long live the lore and legacy of Ken Peplowski. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate you talking about the good old days and Ken. So I really appreciate it.
Sure. Good old days, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When I heard about Ken passing, it was, I've interviewed him and I've always loved having him on the show. He has such a bright, wonderful spirit. It was kind of like a gut punch. So I'm sure it's still rippling through the jazz community. So again, thank you for taking a minute out to talk about it today.
Of course. It's my pleasure.
So let's go back to the beginning. Talk to me about meeting Ken and your working relationship and how that kind of gained steam.
Well, we met each other in the mid-'80s. I don't remember the exact year, but it's roughly, 40 years ago, which is quite substantial. And I think the circumstance was there was a drummer who I don't know ever what became of him, named Hap Gormley, who was interested in doing a sort of Benny Goodman trio, Benny Goodman with Teddy Wilson on piano and Gene Krupa on drums, so no bass player involved, which of course puts the piano in that earlier jazz style, which was fairly new to me in some ways and not the thrust of what I was doing, but I was up for the challenge, and it was great to meet Ken, and that began a 40-year musical relationship where we did a lot of different things together over the years.
What was special about him in regards to not only being a player, but obviously his persona and who he was? What was so good about knowing and playing with him?
Well, I think we both had a relationship to our respective instruments that had a fair amount in common, where Ken was just an immaculate, beautiful clarinet player. He could play anything, He focused obviously on jazz and swing into bebop styles is what he's best known for. But, he could play classical music. He could play all kinds of things. And I've also approached the piano in a way where I take playing the instrument itself very seriously and play classical music myself. And so we kind of just touched on all those areas of musical style that we had in common, that we both loved, and neither one of us felt a need to feel like there were boundaries. We just wanted to play good music. We even did a classical recital together once. And he played, as you know, both on these recent CDs. He was a guest on 2 tracks of both The Good Old Days and also something called Classics Reimagined, which came out just a few months ago. And those are classical themes that I've reimagined into the world of jazz, and he was a perfect guy to be a guest on a few songs because, again, he's got just such a great clarinet sound and approach, and understands how to bridge those stylistic differences.
The clarinet's kind of a special instrument in the world of jazz. I mean, obviously with Benny and all of the masters, I would say Ken is definitely in that echelon. What kind of impact do you think he has made, not only on that instrument, but in the history of jazz and how he's going to be remembered for his contribution?
Well, again, his clarinet playing is second to none, and I think the impact there would just be setting a really high standard of both playing the clarinet and musicianship. I think the styles that he was most known for have never gone away. There are always fashions and trends and the latest thing, which is all great. I love all great music of many styles. but I think Ken's contribution also sort of reinforces the respect and love for the jazz tradition that many people have of all ages.
I know that when I saw Good Old Days come my way, and I've been playing it, I was pretty excited to hear Ken again. It has to be bittersweet to have him on this album. What does this album mean for you to have Ken on here? Does it seem like a big hello with dots, or does it seem like a goodbye? What does it mean to have this kind of? I mean, he's not here physically, but his spirit is still here.
Well, it points again to a long history and a long trajectory of things we did together. In fact, I should point out and not bury one of the leads that the song, The Good Old Days, I wrote 20 odd years ago, and Ken asked me to do a record date of his for Nagelhire label. And I said, sure, of course, I'd love to be a part of it, thank you. And I said, by the way, I have a song that I think might fit, what you're doing and the record. And Ken, again, even though his styles were in more the old school, was very adventurous and always up for trying new things. And this song was called The Good Old Days. So Ken played it, and he said, yeah, I like it, let's record it. I said, great. So the first recording of this was actually of that song was actually on an album for Ken. So then you fast forward 20 or odd years, and I'm releasing this series of 4 CDs, as you know, and the final release is I decided to call The Good Old Days because I thought it was very descriptive of the music on the CD, which harkens back to ragtime and swing and pre-bop, I call it, early bebop. And so I thought Ken would be a great person to join in. And because we recorded The Good Old Days with Ken as a quartet, I actually didn't have him play on that song. I did that song as a trio, but Ken joined me for 2 original compositions. And he played great. One is called Hot Sauce, which is a little play on words. It's based on the harmonies of Strut and Listen Barbecue. And the other one is actually a calypso kind of thing called Sunny Side Up. So, having Ken on these records was a perfect fit. And as you asked, the CDs arrived by UPS the day after he passed away. So that was, a bit of a stinger in terms of, the reality of, here this album just came and he's gone. So I hope it will, serve as a nice memory and a nice tribute. I view it that way for sure. And I'm glad we did it, and I have it.
So it's obviously streaming everywhere, but if anybody wants to pick up a copy of this album in earnest and a physical or a download version, where can they go?
Well, we've released it digitally on a slightly different schedule. You could listen on all the streaming services that you might use, like Spotify or Apple Music. As far as buying the CD, it will be available May 1st. And there's a distribution company called Spinny Media that I'm using that you can go directly to their site, but they also put it up on Amazon and the places that people might be more familiar with and comfortable buying from. So May 1st, you can actually buy the physical CD from those places.
Wonderful. I will get those links in the show notes. Ted, it's always so great to catch up. I'm so glad that we had a chance to give a very slight yet poignant memorial for the Titan and Ken Peplowski. And thank you, as always. I love your music, and it's great to catch up with you and talk about this project.
Well, thanks, Joe. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a few words about my good friend and just an incredible musician, Ken Peplowski. And I'm playing a set this afternoon on the Jazz Fest at Sea, and I am going to dedicate one of the pieces to him, and I've heard other musicians do the same. So his music and his spirit definitely live on.
Absolutely, forever it will. Thank you so much. Best of luck on the high seas, and until we meet again, thank you, Ted. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players and minds in LA, New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Ted for swinging on by the show and honoring his friend, Mr. Ken Peplowski. If you want to hear more Neon Jazz interviews, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.